We're happy to bring on Ed Easton Jr. of Chiefs Wire. We're excited to talk about this. This is a big-time matchup because I feel like both teams were kind of counted out very prematurely. The Lions usually start slow, especially in the Campbell era, with resting everybody in the preseason. They had new pieces, so that first game didn't look so good. The Chiefs, I've been hearing a lot of kind of negative things about at the beginning of the year, but they still look like one of the Super Bowl favorites here. So we're happy to bring on Ed to talk about it. And thanks for joining the show, Ed.
Hey, man. Thank you for inviting me, man. I appreciate the opportunity to talk some football.
We love talking football here. We do celebrate the thing of the day, though. So we just talked to Shane Graham, Pro Bowl kicker. He was summarizing the Bengals game for us here, and he picked for the National Day, he picked favorite animal. So do you have a favorite animal, Ed?
You know what? That's a great question. I think I'm going to go with a panther. I think that's going to be my favorite animal.
That's a good one. Not to be confused with the Carolina Panthers. You're not rooting for them or anything. He's a Chiefs guy here.
That.
Yeah, I mean, you might have some empathy for how the Panthers are doing. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about them too. But no, I'm excited to talk about the Chiefs because it's interesting to me with teams that are this good. It's like people just get used to them being good, and then we kind of stop talking about how great a team is or a player is. And I feel like in a weird way we're already there with Mahomes, because I want to get your take on this. I was looking at the roster, and I've been watching most of the games to prepare for this segment, and it seems to me that this team has kind of flipped in recent years. It was always driven by the offense. You've got Andy Reid, you've got Mahomes vying for the greatest quarterback of all time here over the course of his career. He's had some decent weapons, but the weapons have kind of thinned out over the years. You still have Mahomes. You have an aging Travis Kelce, who's got a ton of opportunities on the horizon, so you don't know how long he's going to last between injuries and health, and then the opportunities that await him. But between all of that and the obvious improvement in both scheme and personnel on the defense, it almost feels like, other than Mahomes, the defense has become the strength of this team, and I feel like that's not talked about enough.
Oh, no, I definitely agree with you on that. I mean, the last couple of seasons, it's taken a turn where the defense has been the strength of the team. You have a guy like Chris Jones, who's quite arguably the best defensive tackle in the league, All-Pro last couple of seasons. Nick Bolton, who I honestly feel is probably the most underappreciated linebacker in the NFL for all the stuff that he does for this team. Half the time he's leading them in tackles. When he is healthy, he is one of the better linebackers in the AFC. And then you got Trent McDuffie on the back end in the secondary at corner. They have so many great players that you do forget because of the press and everything that's said about Mahomes, everything that's said about Kelce. They do bring the eyeballs to the team in terms of all the stuff they've done offensively in the past. If you look at the past two seasons, even the year they did win the Super Bowl against the 49ers, it was all because of that defense. Mahomes doesn't have the same weapons as he had in the past. Everyone's going to bring up Tyreek Hill, and that is a great example. There is no replacing a Tyreek Hill at wide receiver. We've seen guys like Marquez Valdez-Scantling try to step in there, Sky Moore, McCole Hardman. So they've always had like a kind of a in-and-out situation at wide receiver. Rashee Rice is the main guy whenever he is available. Obviously, he won't be available against the Lions. He'll be available the week after because of the suspension. Xavier Worthy stepped up as well. But when you talk about the crux of this team, Steve Spagnuolo and the schemes and everything that he brings to that defense is really what makes the team. It gets the team going at the end of the day. You look at the game against Baltimore, they dominated. I mean, Lamar Jackson did get hurt later, but they dominated for the most part outside of the opening drive where Baltimore came down and scored. The defense pretty much ignites what this team wants to be and how they want to move. Patrick Mahomes is still going to be Patrick Mahomes, but at the end of the day, it doesn't fall on him and having to win a game.
I'm glad you brought up those names you did on defense, because I feel like there are some very underrated players there because we're in the era of Mahomes. And so then the attention gets drawn to this almost seems like, now that I'm thinking about it, I didn't think of this comparison until now, but this almost reminds me of the prime Chicago Bulls of the second run there, where they had Rodman on the team after Jordan had come back, because they had the guy that was clearly positioning himself as one of the greatest of all time in Jordan. But then, in a weird way, he wasn't the most talked about player on the team, because they had Rodman, who was the talk of the town, and he was doing all this stuff, and he was wrestling over in WCW and doing all sorts of random things. That's kind of what I feel like is happening with the Chiefs to a degree, because you have Mahomes and his continued greatness. He's stacking up all these records and different accomplishments, and he's going to continue to do so as long as he's healthy, even with the lesser set of weapons that we talked about. But then you have Travis Kelce, that's obviously very popular as a result of his attachment to Taylor Swift. So now he's bringing in a different crowd, and I feel like nobody's really talking about the defense. They're just talking about between those two people that kind of fills the whole time.
Yeah, that's a lot of the talk regarding that is going to continue to be, yes, the defense. They are the strength of the team, but when you have a Travis Kelce, when you have Patrick Mahomes, who when you talk about their stardom, it goes beyond just football. Just like you were saying, obviously Travis and everything that he has going on off the field is a big deal. So as good as the defense has been and it continues to be, you're always going to have the conversation about what Mahomes is going to be doing in terms of what records he's going to break, what Travis Kelce is going to be doing, whether it's on the field or off the field. It just, at the end of the day, the identity is their defensive team. They've made changes in the offseason to become more explosive again on offense. They've talked about it throughout training camp and even leading into the start of the year. The first two games weren't really a great indication of what the offense is, because you had the Xavier Worthy injury. You don't have Rashee Rice. They had Tyquan Thornton, who was an afterthought in New England just about over a year ago. He was their top receiver while Worthy was out. So they're kind of still playing this mismatched game to see who can fit here, who can make a play there. The offense is going to get better towards the end of the season once they do have all their players together and they do mesh, barring any injury. But just like you were saying, the defense, they're really the hero of this team. Last year, they carried the team for the most part for those 15 wins. And you're seeing a lot of the elements of what Steve Spagnuolo, what he brings. He's one of the best defensive coordinators in history. There's never been a coordinator to go to the Hall of Fame. And a lot of people are saying, why not Spags? He's done it with two different places. He did it with the Giants a couple of years back. So it's all these different elements, but the defense, they're really the strength of this team.
You mentioned some of the players being out. I feel like that's going to be a main storyline leading up to this game. Obviously, we're at Monday right now, and it's a long way till Sunday. You have another game in between here as the Chiefs, but I want to talk about some of those players that are going to be out, and then what you see out of the matchups, because on both sides there's some key people missing, and I'm curious what you think of the matchup with the Lions here. But we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back with Ed Easton Jr. of Chiefs Wire. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Ed Easton Jr. of Chiefs Wire, having a good conversation with him about the upcoming Chiefs-Lions matchup. The matchup is obviously, I mean, this is a potential Super Bowl preview. I don't think that's hyperbolic to say. The Chiefs have the more likely path in some ways, as far as they've been there before. They've got the greatest quarterback in the league right now, and somebody vying for that all time. And so I'm curious about your thoughts on the matchup with the Lions, though, because the last time these two teams matched up, there were some key injuries. That seems to be happening again. You mentioned Jones. He'll be back. That was a key loss in the last matchup, and it was early in the season, so it was harder to kind of tell what these two teams were about. Now there's some different pieces in there. You mentioned them missing Rice, but I'm curious what matchups you kind of have your eyes on, whether it's individual matchups, player for player, or position or group matchups as well.
Definitely. I mean, when you look at both teams, Super Bowl contenders, as you were just saying, so much talent across the board on both sides of the ball. I think one of the main things I'm looking at is the Chiefs' offensive line being able to hold up against the Lions' pass rush. There's been so much back and forth of whether or not the offensive line has gotten better. Last game was probably their best performance with rookie Josh Simmons at left tackle, and then you got Kingsley over at guard now. That whole left side of the Chiefs' offensive line has caught the most criticism because they're basically trying players out. Kingsley had transitioned from playing tackle to guard, and then you have a rookie at left tackle. So you go against a team like Detroit, which you got Hutchinson, you got different playmakers on defense. It could be an issue in regards to how the team prepares and how they're going to have. They have to win that matchup. You need Mahomes has to have time. So I'm really curious to see how that plays out in terms of a one-on-one matchup. I'm not too sure how much Spagnuolo's going to even agree with this. We're having St. Brown and possibly McDuffie matching up against each other. You talk about an all-pro corner going against one of the better wide receivers in the league. That, to me, would be something to look out for. I feel like when you go back and forth with these teams and just because of the talent that is on both sides, it's going to be like that first matchup to start the 2023 year, where a lot of the Chiefs players that are from that time still remember the feeling of losing on banner night to start the season off. So I just think all those elements are going to come into play when you have two great teams like this. But those are like two matchups that really stand out to me. I also want to see, in terms of Jared Goff and how comfortable he's going to be in that situation. He played well the last time they were at Arrowhead Stadium. The pass rush of the Chiefs will be there. Chris Jones, like you mentioned, he didn't play the first game last time because of a holdout in terms of his contract situation. So there's going to be these different elements that are coming to play, and it's going to be a fun game to just watch for anybody because either team, if they're on, if the Chiefs are able to get their passing game going, especially their running game with Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, it changes the dynamic of that offense. You're going to see Mahomes take more shots down the field and go for those explosive moments.
Those are two good picks. I was actually thinking the reverse of that to a degree. You kind of alluded to it with the pass rush on the Chiefs side because the one guy, you were right to bring up McDuffie. I think he's underrated and one of the top corners, but he's just not talked about in the national media that I see too much. Jones is elite. You talked about him. But the other guy that's often a concern on that defense is Karlaftis, and I'm curious how the pass rush is going to do against the Lions kind of rebuilt offensive line because, like you said, the key is kind of keeping Goff upright and in the pocket, and if it's probably going to depend on who can crush that pocket. And then on the Lions side, the other thing that is kind of place of concern for the Lions side of things is the reverse of what you're talking about with the receiver corner matchup because they're already missing DJ Reed, their top corner. Now it's been announced that Terrion Arnold's out, and although he's been kind of much maligned here in the early season, he has been valuable to them, and I think we will see a bit of a downgrade here because they basically only have they only have two other folks on the roster, and they were both practice squad call-ups that would be opposite Amik Robertson in that other corner spot. So even though that's not necessarily a current strength with Rice being out and that unit being a little bit thinner than normal between Mahomes and then Worthy at the top, it's going to be interesting to see who can get the advantage between those depth receivers on the Chiefs end and the depth corners on the Lions end.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. And just seeing how, you obviously talk about a guy like Andy Reid and all the experience he's had in those situations. Will he take advantage of that? Will he say, okay, let's take more shots down the field, knowing that the cornerback situation with Detroit? These are all factors. Like I brought up Tyquan Thornton. He stepped up big time while Worthy was out. He's had 3 touchdowns the last couple of games. So they have players, and, the Chiefs will – they're still going to run their same offense, and a lot of it starts with the running game. That's where they've had their struggles. Mahomes has led the team in rushing to start the season, which is not a good sign for your running game. So I think it really comes down to that. If the Chiefs are able to run the football, then they really have a great shot of making more plays down the field.
I agree. The Lions' run defense so far has been pretty stout, but then there's been a lot made about the pass defense as well and the pass rush. So I'm curious who's going to win that battle. But there's a lot of different factors there. Like you said, I'm excited to see the game. Like you said, it's going to be a great game. There's a lot of nuance to it, but it's going to be two great teams fighting it out here. Great environment. I'm curious what you think on a prediction here, Ed. What you think on the score? I expect you to choose the Chiefs, so that won't offend me. But what do you think the final's going to be?
You know what? Because I think it's going to be such a tight battle. This is one of those games that's going to come down to maybe a Harrison Butker field goal. So, obviously, like you said, I am going to take the Chiefs in this game, and I'm going with 27-24.
That's a good pick. That's usually around what I pick for the Lions side of things. And you could see that narrative on the other side, too, because two good kickers, too. We just talked with a Pro Bowl kicker in Shane Graham, and you've got Butker and Bates. So whichever unit, if it does come down to a final field goal, whoever is kicking the field goal, whatever team that is going to feel confident in their kicker there, because those are two of the best in the league. So should be fun to watch. We're excited to watch it. We'll make sure to talk to you next week and kind of summarize the game. I'm excited about that. Tell the people where they can follow your coverage in between here to get the Chiefs side of things.
You can follow me at Easton Jr. on everything, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, or even YouTube. Always ChiefsWire.com for USA Today. And we're just going to continue with the coverage. But, Ryan, thank you so much for the invite.
Definitely. Yeah, it's great stuff. I've been reading Ed's stuff leading up to the interview here. He's got a bunch of nuance, covers a bunch of different subjects. So be sure to follow him for the Chiefs side of things. And we'll look forward to talking to you next week here, Ed.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall, DDS, Calder Financial Group, Grand Management, Rydan Investments, JH Realty Partners, and Encore Business Group. Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh airs live Monday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern on Jethro.fm.
Stay informed and stay vigilant.